Welcome to Tell the Damn Story, the show that explores the many ways to navigate the successes and failures that aspiring and struggling writers face to make your journey that much easier.
Yeah.
Woo!
I don't know. We're feeling this, man. I don't seem to be getting much tanner, but I love being on the beach with you, brother.
Yeah.
This idea of yours to go for completely Alex Simmons's idea to go for an entirely write-offable business expense research vacation.
Of course.
It's been a wonderful idea. We have really gotten great ideas for the next Blackjack story.
Yep.
Last night.
No, but you said we wouldn't talk about last night.
Sorry, but I think she's going to be an intriguing character. That's all I say. And I keep arguing with you. I argued in front of her that a femme fatale is what Blackjack needed.
Obviously, I can't hold my Mai Tais. Here we are, another summer short of Tell the Damn Story. Here we are.
I'm wearing shorts too. There you go.
But
I am wearing shorts that they weren't short last night, but they must have shrunk.
He lost the bottom part of his pants.
Yo, listen. What happened when we were on our way home from the Rocky Beach?
Oh,
yo, bro, I got to show you, man. I woke up with this morning.
I
said, I gotta ask Alex about this. Look at this leg, bro. Look at the way to go.
You just vanished. Your leg just vanished. My goodness.
My leg.
Ouch. What did you do?
I don't know.
I told you, running among the rocks late at night, low moon, doesn't work, man. You should have stayed in the room.
Yes.
Okay.
But those mask guys were chasing us. So
that's why I ducked into the closet.
Well, there you go. But I was looking for a closet in the beach, but there wasn't any. So I got to the jetty
and dove into the water. And swim, brother, swim. Whatever. As you can see, folks, this is a strange episode. It's what happens when we get too much sun.
But it's all for research for
you,
ladies and gentlemen. And I tell you what, the way my head feels today, I am glad we have some student questions to answer.
Yes.
So we don't have to talk about this thoroughly above board. It's all expense paid research vacation.
That's right.
We don't the episode.
Right. As a matter of fact, I know more about palm trees now than I ever knew before. It's all going to go in the book.
Yes.
But no, as Chris just stated, yes, we are here to answer 6. Well, I won't say popular, but these questions do come up quite often among our students, among private clients. Sometimes when writers get together and we're talking about our particular challenges, you'll hear 1 or 2 of these questions. So we put together this half dozen, and Chris and I are going to go back and forth giving a fairly, short, concise POV of how we handle these things, or maybe even refer to the expertise of a writer that we revere and respect. But let's
we have some samples too. So you are going to go away hands full of goodies, ladies and gentlemen.
There will be, by the way, folks, a little bonus download for you. Keep that in mind. So stay to the end. Okay, so question number 1. How do you develop a non-linear story? And they use as a reference sometimes Inception or Memento, or even, going into my Wayback Machine, Rashomon.
Yes.
So what's your answer to that, Chris? What's your answer to that?
Well, the secret and the cheat, but all is fair in writing, is to write the story in order and then rearrange it.
Of course.
Even if you outline an order and then rearrange it. However, to see how it's done well, right? We have a couple of things, and we'll put the links and stuff. I sent Alex a bunch of links, and I'm sure he has a bunch himself. We'll put those in the bottom of wherever the materials are with this episode. But, it was mentioned Memento, the film Memento. And I have a link that'll be included for Memento Mori, which is Jonathan Nolan's original short story I think it appeared in either Esquire or New York Magazine. But you have it, and it is non-linear. So you can read it and study it. And, a short story is easier to go through 3, 4, 5 times and make notes on the side. And this is how this was done. Taking things apart is the best way to understand how to do it, right? Hunter S. Thompson used to type out Ernest Hemingway novels that were already written. He would just look at them and type them out, forcing himself to see word for word how things were built. This is kind of the same thing. You look at the source material, read it, analyze that, watch the movie. I also sent a link for the script of Pulp Fiction and the script of Inception. So you have 3 things that you can open up, print out, whatever works for you, and make a ton of notes on. And by going through that, you'll learn how they did it. And all 3 of those are considered classics. So you're learning from the best. How's that, Alex?
Absolutely brilliant. And I will just quickly say I concur with Chris on all of that, in particular, laying out the story first so that you know what the story is, you know the beginning, middle, and end, so you know where it's supposed to go. And then
Right.
how you arrange that becomes the experience that the audience will have.
You
So,
can also do with one more with a very recent Life of Chuck. That was in one of his collections, Stephen King's collections, but it's not now out by itself, and you can watch the movie. He tells that story in sections, and he's going backwards. So there you go.
yep.
Plenty,
Okay.
plenty for you to do. Let's move on.
Yes.
How do you write scenes with no dialogue and still get the point, the plot, or the character's frustrations, tensions, and conflicts across?
I have no idea. No. Okay. So actually, to some degree, this is a similar answer to the one that Chris and I were talking about for question number 1. In order to know how your character is going to react and so forth, you have to have some sort of understanding of where you're going with the story. What's the story about? What do you think is supposed to happen by the end of it? So it's beginning, middle, and end. Get a sense of the structure of it and what your characters are going to go through, what conflicts and emotions they're going to deal with. And then what you're doing is you're saying, okay, if this is the story, if this is the journey this character is going on, and I'm not going to have any dialogue, how do I visually show these moments, these
Right.
changes, these conflicts, these emotional highs and lows? And I would think, one of the references might be A Silent Place, which for the most part has little or no dialogue whatsoever.
That's
But you're
built right into the plot. Yeah.
right. You're really clear what is going on. Now, yes, people will say, oh, but that's a science fiction thing. It's got monsters and everything. Yeah, but they still had to do the same thing. How do I get the character's emotional being? How do I get their frame of mind? And in particular, it's one thing if somebody's frightened or someone's angry or someone's feeling romantic. Those are easier emotions to convey visually. But if there's a normalcy to the moment, a normalcy to the day, to the actions and things they're doing, and yet inwardly they're going through things, they're working on things, you
Yeah.
need to know what's going on in their heads and how they feel, and then depict through motion or through visuals those particular feelings. So
Yeah.
you can use your actors, obviously, to portray that through your characters, but also there can be visual clues that you will lay out in props, in set pieces, and so on. So
Yeah.
initially, know your story first. Work out, and I think Chris said it earlier, you can even do it in an outline form. Work out the beginning, middle, and end of your story. Where are you going with your story? Know the conflicts that your character is going to go up against, and then map out the visuals that will help convey that information to your
Yeah.
audience. It's not cheating to write it out first. Oh, this is another one. To write it out first, even with dialogue,
Right.
then remove the dialogue and
I
make
have a
sure that the visuals carry the message across.
I have a great example of that. I have several
Chris,
examples
do you
here.
have a great example of that?
I accidentally. Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
So when I was looking to answer this question, I said, "Oh," and I researched a particular film, and because the opening sequence has no dialogue whatsoever, I mean, maybe one line, maybe that's it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I got a copy of it, and the link is in, it's ready for you. But when I looked at the script, there's actually dialogue all through that sequence that they dropped. So it's a great example of, oh, you can do without this dialogue, right? So it's the script for, and I want you to look at the opening sequence of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Because there's almost no dialogue in there, but in the script you'll see how many lines they threw out, and it's a good exercise. Yeah, they didn't need that line. They didn't need that line, right? Secondly, I sent the link to the Iron Man script, and
The first one?
the first one, specifically find the sequence when he's making the armor, right? And see what's actually there, and then compare it with the film. So that's 2 script comparisons, right? I have one other thing I thought of when you were talking. There's a novel and a book comparison opportunity. Bird Box. I'm pretty sure, about 98% sure that the author is Josh Malaman. Remember, Bird Box, if you spoke, the monsters would hear you come and eat you, right? So you couldn't speak, or you couldn't. You had to wear. I think they took the sight away. I think that's what it was.
Oh, yes, that's the one with, I can't remember the actress's name.
Sandra Bullock.
Yes, with her child. Yes, right.
And there's a lot of, but they have to be quiet and they have to not see. So there's another exercise of sensory deprivation and then what it does. So there you go for that one.
Let me just quickly throw in, just very quickly. There's, and I don't remember the season, but I'll put it in the show notes. There's one season of CSI New York, and I don't remember the episode, but I'll put that in. But the entire first 20 minutes of that episode is silent. There's no dialogue, none whatsoever. And they go all over the place, including to a political rally somewhere on the main streets of New York City. But again, you've got sound, you've got all the ambient sound and all that, but nobody speaks.
Speaking. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I think it was season 3. The episode was called Hush. And the gentlemen come and they took all the sound. So again, another fun exercise. I have one that doesn't literally answer this question, but I just posted it on my Facebook because it's a great example of the scene happening between the 2 lines. And it's from Ben Affleck's The Town. And you've all seen this scene because it's become a GIF or a GIF or a whiff, whatever. Ben Affleck comes in and he says, I need your help. You can't ask me where. We can never talk about it again. And we're going to hurt some people. And they cut to Jeremy Renner, who's relaxing on a couch. And he looks up and he never answers the question, right? You see him thinking. And he says, whose car are we going to use? Right? And what happens in between there is you see his loyalty. You see he's already thinking along the lines, what do we need to get this done? And that's the only question he has, not about whether I'm going to do it or not, because that's already answered. And it's a great exercise to see that and think, how do I do that? How do I have this story fall between the lines?
I'll throw one more in. Way back, way back, late 1950s, 77 Sunset Strip. It was a TV series, very popular TV series at the time from Warner Brothers, about these private detectives.
At least that's what I heard.
Yes, yeah, sure, right. There's a whole episode, no one talks. It's called The Silent Caper. The entire
you could probably find that on YouTube, right?
Well, it's hard to find. I had it for a while and then it seems to have vanished. But either way, what I'll quickly say about that is sound effects were utilized in a major way to convey, and not only to convey information, but also to help the audience forget, or at least accept the fact that people weren't talking. The sound was upped. So if there was a jangling of jewelry in the ears, it was a little louder. Doorknobs are a little louder, things like that. The ambient sound became more important. And at one point, when you're trying to figure out what time it is, he'd looked at his watch in one moment, but another moment was the tolling of the town clock, right? Which, with the audience that was watching it, when I showed this episode, they weren't paying attention to that. When I brought it to their attention by saying, so what time was it when he did such and such? Well, he didn't look at his watch. I said, yeah, but, and we went back and we played it and there was the chiming. So again, sound is a tool to utilize when you are not utilizing dialogue. Okay,
Very cool.
Third question.
You want to read it? Or?
No, I get to do this one. I get to
Yes,
do this one
okay.
to you. So,
Yes, sir.
Chris,
Yes.
how do you write an intriguing mystery story from first person POV? I mean, suppose the protagonist, your character who's going to solve this, is telling the story and doesn't know a whole lot of things. How do
Right.
you keep the audience interested while revealing information about the antagonist and the other supporting characters, as well as providing clues, red herrings, and so forth? How do you do all that?
Well, I will tell you, hey, Philip, I sent a link to, and I'm pulling it up now, crimereads.com. Right. And I sent this article is you got to get through a lot of, they want you to be a member and all that sort of stuff. But the name of this article is Seven Great Crime Novels with First Person Narrators.
Ah,
And
wow,
not
good.
all of them, we'll go through them because they're very modern. Okay. A Violent Gospel, it's a novella by Mark Westmoreland, who is a writer on the rise. A couple of years ago, I submitted to one of his anthologies. I was in the last cut. It is what it is. But there's one, first person.
Hmm.
Don't Know Tough by Eli Cranor. Cold in July by the one and only Joe R. Lansdale. I know there was a
Oh,
film version of that, so you could read and see what they did in the film. Let's see. S.A. Cosby, one of the great, great crime writers working today. My Darkest Prayer, which he
mm.
had written and it just got republished this year. It is fantastic. All of his stuff is just amazing. Cormac McCarthy, No Country for Old Men. This comes with a warning, ladies and gents. McCarthy's not an easy ride, but you'll never forget the experience and you'll learn a ton from the things that he does stylistically. And this style is very different than The Road. If you've read The Road, he had very depressed style because it was apocalypse. This is more sophisticated, but again, first person. The Past is Never by Tiffany Quay Tyson. A Land More Kind Than Home, Wiley Cash. Dies With You, Scott Blackburn. So those are seven novels. You can pick them up in the library or on the library Libby app, which you can borrow for free and start your research. It will show you how those guys do it, and they're all bestsellers. So I think that works pretty well for you. What do you got to say, sir?
I would say, once again, this is one of those situations where, I stand behind character for one. I think
Oh,
that
that's a
knowing,
respect.
order quickly, knowing your character, knowing how they think, what they feel, all of those things. Again, Chris and I are constantly talking about know your characters. But this is key because there was a movie some years ago called Lady in the Lake. Again, Wayback Machine, right? And it was directed by Robert Montgomery. Now I mention that because people go, "Oh, that's not a big name director." No, it's not. Actually, Montgomery was an actor, and he starred in this film as well as directed it. But what was unique was it was a sort of a Sam Spade detective movie where he has to solve this murder, right? But we never, no, I shouldn't say never. We only see this detective, Robert Montgomery, who's directing the film too. We only see him one time in the entire feature film.
In a
And-
mirror?
Right, in the mirror. That's the entire rest of the film, the camera are his eyes, and we are seeing everything that happens through his eyes.
Yeah.
So we are seeing what he sees when he sees it, period. And
I just go ahead. I'm sorry,
this is a
sir.
great exercise in thinking about, okay, we're not getting any information ahead. We're not getting any kind of extra clues and everything. When the camera is panning, we need to be paying attention because literally what he sees is what we see, and those are the important moments. Even when he's talking to certain characters, how they respond, they're looking at us.
Yeah.
So it's a very, interesting. I think a couple of other people have done this, but this is one of those things that stands out in my mind and was supposedly one of the first times that it was done in a major feature film. So once again, you've got to know your character, you got to know what they're about, how they deal with things, what they're going to notice, what they won't notice, and then how they will process this. And you
Yeah.
don't get to turn the camera around and look at their face,
Right.
right? Just in case you're in a tight spot. You have to find a way, like, again, a reflection in a mirror or in the water or something like that. Or we don't. We have to show their reactions and how people are reacting to us. So, I mean, that's again from a film standpoint, from a writing standpoint, I still say the same thing. Know the character, know how they think, how they feel, and then how do they see the world and the story that you're moving them through.
Yes. I'll give you one extra. Uh, if you go on Disney, one of the stations that Disney kind of has in its umbrella is National Geographic. And they have an intriguing documentary, Jaws at 50. And it there's just a ton of filmmakers being interviewed and how it was done and all that sort of stuff. But there's one or two of them that point out that Spielberg uses multiple point of view, right? It's definitely Sheriff Brody's story, and you kind of experience most of the story from his point of view. But they take this wild narrative risk there, Spielberg and company does. There are certain times when the film is told from the shark's point of view, right? And they discuss that. If you're a filmmaker, aspiring filmmaker, that documentary is worth, just for the sheer number of directors that
Mm-hmm.
comment on it,
Mm-hmm.
and actors and film people. It may prove to be a pain in the ass to get through. It kept stopping, and I have to click back and continue and all that sort of stuff. But it was so intriguing
That it
that
was worth
even
the
though it
effort.
happened 7 or 8 or 10 times, I still kept going because I wanted to see what else people had to say and what else I could learn from. So Jaws at 50 there. Let's continue.
Yes. Let's move on to that next one.
How do you write a character? Is that the one?
Yep, it should be number 4.
One, two, three, four. Yeah. How do you write a character who is having an emotional breakdown or is delusional if you've never experienced those things?
Wow.
Alex.
How come I get the tough ones? No. Okay. Once again, I think I have sort of a short answer for this one, and I'm thinking maybe Chris has some links or things like that to, various places that you can go. But I'm thinking really this falls under research for me anyway. For me, it's very clear. People who have certain emotional conditions or mental conditions, if you want to use that term, there are specifics involved. Someone can say, "Oh, well, someone's a drunk," no, or someone's an alcoholic. But yeah, but there are different ways of being an alcoholic, and part of the person's personality and the kind of stuff that they drink and what their life is like. All these things are factors. Maybe there's certain common denominators, but I'm not an expert in any of that. So for me, I would have to identify the condition that this person supposedly has and then do my homework and then choose based on the backstory of the character and then the specific research information that I've acquired, see how do they blend together. And once you do that, once you take your information and your fictionalized character and you start shuffling the pieces together, you have to actually start to see how this character will deal with, or might organically or authentically deal with, some of the factual experiences they're going to have to go through. I think that, some people are saying like OCD, okay? People say, "Oh, I'm OCD, I'm OCD." And they sort of grab that moniker without ever having been tested. So I
Right.
think again, it's a matter of getting clear about what are the specific habits, traits, expectations of that condition, then looking at which ones fit within your story, fit within the nature of the character you're talking about, and then go forth from there. And then have somebody check you. Because
Yeah.
that's the other thing too, is have somebody who knows their business, knows that realm, take a look at your work. Because ultimately, it's better to have someone like that say to you, "Oh, no, no, this would never happen," or "This doesn't fly," or "You're making this up totally," or and be able to make those corrections than to put that story with all of its assumptions out on the marketplace and be laughed out of your socks.
That's right. Because you never want to lose your socks.
No, no, or
Um,
your shorts.
for some, growing up around someone with deep mental illness will probably help a lot, but You know, it's not something you sign up for.
Hmm.
Ken Kesey, who wrote the book One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which was then turned into a play and then turned into a movie. But what he did was he volunteered at a psych board. I don't know, it was a year, or maybe he got a job there. Maybe he's getting paid, but it was a year or two amongst the people he wanted to write about. And they didn't rip them off, but he learned the dynamic interplay. He learned what really goes on and what is fake, and then
Hmm.
and then he wrote from there. So that's one. Dennis Lehane, who I love his crime stuff and all that sort of stuff. But he wrote Shutter Island. And the fascinating thing about Shutter Island is you get to the last word of the novel, and you can have a debate with someone else who read the book as to whether the narrator was crazy or the circumstances and people around him were conspiring to make him crazy. I think you're going to learn a lot from that one. The classic, again, we're going back to the novel, but you can look at for both Shutter Island and this one, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, you can look at both the book and the movie. Cuckoo's Nest, book, play, and movie, and see the differences. But Shutter Island was a movie, and so was this one. The novel Robert Bloch wrote called Psycho
Mm.
is a great starting point. And then you have the Hitchcock movie, and there is nobody you can learn better from than Hitch. So there you go.
To his
Um,
friends, he's Hitch, right?
if you're looking for something a little more close to home, somebody wrote a work called It's Been a Privilege. That mother, yeah, that guy right
Yeah.
there. So you have some stuff to look at. But again, writers and creators live and die by the research they do and the work they do before the story. You know, there's a legendary book that I haven't put out yet called The Character Questionnaire. So it's 100, maybe 150, maybe there's more. I forget how many questions there are. And most of that will never show up in your written work, but it's the more you know your characters inside and out, the more organic and believable even the most outrageous stories will be. So we go back to
I
that.
think we should add to the bonus pack that we're gonna have people download is
You have a snippet
40.
of that.
The 40, yes, the 40
You have them
questions.
somewhere. I don't know where
Yeah.
they are. You have them. We're going to go to question.
Five.
I read that, right?
I get to read that one. All right, so how do you write a story with adult challenges, but from a child's point of view? I mean, doesn't that limit the ability to explain what's going on or to understand the more adult aspects of the conflict?
Wow. I know you have an example. I'm going to leave that one for you.
Okay.
I'm going to use one. The book's name is Harold, and it is written from an point of view of, I think it's an 8-year-old boy. He might be a little younger, but Harold is, I think, 8. Um, um, he's either on the spectrum or a genius. He's a genius. He's just bored with the regular level of education that's going on. So he has flights of fancy and observations of the adults in his room, the room. A lot of time it's the teacher who clearly doesn't know what to do with it.
Mm.
And sometimes it's his parents. But it's an incredible point of view and a really fresh and I would say absurdist, but very revealing look at the world from a different set of eyes. So that's a great example. Now, Alex, I think you had.
Yeah, the quick one that I sort of reference is Jojo Rabbit, which actually Jojo Rabbit, and there's a second film, but I'll talk about Jojo first. Here you have definitely an 8-year-old boy during 1930s, late 1930s, when the Nazi regime has risen in Germany, and they've very much inundated the youth with the idea that Nazism is wonderful and that you should ascribe to be that. You should strive to be a good little Nazi. And it's like boys' camp. It's like the Boy Scouts or something like that. And so Jojo is in this, and he wants to be a good little Nazi, and his imaginary playmate is Adolf Hitler.
Right.
And when you look at this, I mean, because he has fantasies of sitting there talking with this guy who supposedly is this wonderful human being. And what's interesting is you know, I mean, as an adult, we have a sense of where Hitler fits in history and all that, and what kind of person he was. But in this through this 8-year-old boy's eyes, this is somebody that he's aspiring to be like. And he's a person who can visit me in my room and everything. So in a way, we're taking the realities that maybe the audience brings into the theater when they realize, okay, Nazis hurt Germany, blah blah blah, but now we're seeing how this boy sees him, how this boy wants to be a good little soldier, a good little, Hitler youth. That's right, that's the term. And then as the story progresses, we learn a little bit more about his family, his mother. We learn a little bit about what life's like around him. So we're still seeing all this through his eyes. Then he goes off to this camp where he's going to study to be a good little Hitler youth kid. And they give him a task that snaps him into the reality that he's dealing with, not on the level of political and
Right.
conquest of other countries and all that, but to kill a little rabbit to prove his
Whoa.
loyalty to Hitler. And I think that's like the key moment, because yeah, they could have said we're conquering other countries. That's the adult level. That's approaching the story from political
Right.
and oppression and all that kind of stuff. But from the child's point of view, none of that is real. The rabbit is real. Hurting that rabbit is real. Hurting and killing that rabbit is not something that's in him, even with the indoctrinations that he's gone through. And he
And
runs from that responsibility. And
it
that's a
broke the
turning point.
spell and let him
Yeah,
think freely.
that's the thing. When push comes to shove, who he really is came forth. And it was embarrassing for him.
Yeah.
It was going against a lot of what he believed to that point. Now that's one of the turning points for him. It's one. I'm not going to go through the whole thing.
Right. Right.
But again, the other steps that he goes through, and he does go through several more, and they increase in their intensity. We always see it through his eyes because he is an 8-year-old boy, and circumstances are demanding that he make certain choices and come to certain realizations as only his 8-year-old mind can
Yeah.
at that point. And that's the cleverness of the story. And it goes back to, again, the age-old rule: know your character.
Right.
Know that your character is an 8-year-old child, and then be clear as best you can how an 8-year-old child will process that. I will go back to my experience as a kid. I will, talk to people that I know, and I will also, in some way, shape, or form, look to children, maybe in research or whatever, to see how they dealt with X, Y, and Z to help me put my head in a place where I can see the world through their lens. I'm not going to be that, but I
Right.
can get as close as I can to it. So again, back to research, back to knowing your character, and then setting up your story accordingly.
I mean, if you were doing your story, it would be Jojo Caveman, but we don't have time
Or
for that.
Jojo Blackman, yeah. But
Hey, hey now.
the other quick one I will say is Belfast.
Yeah, Belfast is really what a great exercise in watching that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I would recommend the book version. I don't know that the film version was that successful for this last one, but the book, A Prayer for Owen Meany, though
Mm-hmm.
not written from Owen's point of view, the camera is right on him all the time, meaning
Mm-hmm.
the story or the novel's camera is right on him. So it's another way to look. And it was, for me, a enthralling book. So
I would say that if one were to question how successful the film was, there's one scene that is, well, there's two, but one scene that really stands out, and is towards the very beginning of the film when the protesters, get these Catholics out of, right, how the boy sees that
right.
and what happens to him in that moment during that period when the rioting is happening, the Molotov cocktails are flying, things like that. That's a great moment because we are seeing it through his eyes to a large
And
degree.
is that Owen Meany or is that Jojo Rabbit?
That's Belfast.
That's Belfast. Okay, that's
Yes.
Belfast. We should to be very clear.
Yeah.
Okay, so lots for
Last
you
one.
to choose from, and we're gonna go to the last one. How do you write a funny romantic comedy without using silly or totally outrageous slapstick situations? What if you really want the relationship to seem real and yet find an amusing or humorous moment in the film? And
Okay.
for that answer, we go to Alex Simmons.
And there's so many different examples of that, but again, because I am the Wayback Machine dude, I'm going to talk about the one that has been the most, I think, the most successful of that. And I go to the great director, writer Billy Wilder, and
Yes,
I go to the film The Apartment
yes.
with Jack Lemmon, Shirley MacLaine, Fred MacMurray, Ray Walston, and a number of other great character actors. That is a romantic comedy in certain ways. It has some absurd situations that, you feel for the lead character, and I'm not going to go too much into describing who he is, but he's a nebbish man. I shouldn't say little man, but he's a nebbish guy, works at a huge insurance company, and he's one of a football field size room of people who are sitting with adding machines calculating the actuarials of the various insurance policies that are out there in the world, right? Just literally just a huge room, and he's one of many. And he wants to work his way up in the company, so he's doing favors for his bosses. And the favor that he has to keep doing for several of his bosses is that he loans them his apartment for their little liaisons with the women they're having an affair with. All right. So now if you're going to be woke, that's not really cool. I mean, you got these guys, they're all having affairs, so they're cheating on their wives. And here's this guy who's loaning his apartment to them so that they can do this several nights a week. And basically, this is how he hopes to work his way up the ladder, the corporate ladder. When you talk about it that way, it sounds pretty chinsy and cheesy, right? But what happens to him while he's doing this and the kind of bosses he has and how they deal with, like, they're not really Machiavellian in their planning. They're sloppy in their planning. There's something even remotely caricaturish about a couple of them. And he has to sometimes sit on a park bench, or he has to work late after, he has to do any number of things. He just wants to get into his apartment and he can't. He's walking the streets. It's cold at night. And you start to feel, okay, I'm not just starting to feel a little sorry for him. Okay, all right, here we go. And there's some silly circumstances with his neighbor, all right? But again, no big laughs. And then you introduce the romance part. He's got this mad crush on an elevator operator there in the building. And she's a sweetheart. And you kind of want them to get together. And then he learns something about her, and it sort of disappoints him. And at that point, you're thinking, okay, so it was funny for a moment, but now he's really depressed. But then in the depression, there's a silliness that goes on. And then what happens to the couple when they try and get together? That takes on a more dramatic tone, but it has some humorous moments. So what I feel from this particular film and from some of the stories and episodes and things that I've enjoyed over the years is you write the human beings in the story. You create the character that you want us to feel whatever towards. So in this case, you want us to feel sympathy for this guy because he really doesn't have it together. He's really sort of floundering, trying to make his way in the world. And you give him someone who you think they would make a cute couple, and you want that relationship to work. And then you give them the circumstances that they're going to have to deal with, the conflicts that they're going to have to deal with, that's going to maybe prevent that from coming together. And then you go and you find the humorous moments or create the humorous moments within that. And again, you're not going for big gags. You're not writing jokes per se. You're writing moments that can have a humorous or comedic element to it at a particular time. And you're seasoning those moments in there, not at the cost of good drama or good romance.
I agree with what you said, Alex. So I'm not going to regurgitate all that, but I am going to give us a list, a series of films that you can use everything Alex said and apply it to these films. And you can get The Apartment in Great American Screenplays. You can borrow that from the library. But you probably can look up some of these screenplays and do the comparative analysis like we've been talking all episode. But to fill your things, romantic comedies that are not slapstick or goofy. When Harry Met Sally, Notting Hill, Silver Linings Playbook, which has the added thing, not only being a romance, but there's several people who you would, upon closer scrutiny, you say, well, they're kind of on the spectrum, or they have some other challenges. So you're kind of answering two questions there. The Big Sick, About Time, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which is probably the most extreme of those examples. Crazy Stupid Love, which might be my personal favorite of this list. And then 500 Days of Summer. I just think Crazy Stupid Love works exceptionally well to not be slapstick. All the humor comes from the frailty of the human heart. You know, so you have plenty of things to view with that question in mind. And I mean, it's one of the best tools that are available to us as creatives, is to watch how others did it well. And say, well, how did that work? Why did that work? And most of these you can find on whatever your streaming services are.
Yeah,
so you have the ability to watch them, you know, do a week of Crazy Stupid Love. Watch it 1 or 2 times to see the humor in it. And then maybe the third time start taking notes. How did that work? How did they seed that? Meaning, do they put the materials or the facts of the character in early so it pays off in humor later, and that kind of thing? You can do that with all of this. Where does the humor come from? The humor usually most successfully comes from the characters banging into each other, not physically, but the perspectives of each other.
I would also say that, and this is sort of to wind this all up, the two things that have come forward each time with each one of these questions seems to be the common denominator, if you will, is character, know your characters, and do your research. Because that seems to have been a given for at least 5 out of the 6.
Yeah.
You know, and that's never a bad thing. You know, if you feel like, oh, I don't want to, no, now you're being lazy, and then the value of the story is not that important to you. The fact that you want it to work should up the ante, so that you're willing to do the work to develop your characters and whatever research is necessary so that your story rings true. And in particular, I mean, when you're doing mysteries or horror or science fiction, you have certain pluses there that people are going to forgive you for this or forgive you that because they're in it for the thrill. When you're doing romantic comedies, or you're doing maybe a very thought-provoking drama, you've got to really get people in there and engaged, and they've got to believe a lot of what's going on in order to stay with those characters and to see how this story works out. And so they come away feeling, yeah, you know, I either I agree with that, or I disagree with that, or I want to discuss that even more. So again, do your homework, know your characters, and then the third thing, common denominator, is lay out your story from beginning to end, and it can be in outline form, so that you have an understanding of where it's supposed to go before you start trying to move the pieces around to be clever or stylistic.
That's all part of telling the damn
story. And since Chris said it earlier, I'll say it now. If you liked what you heard, hit that like, hit that subscribe, and then come back next week. And also, we have a comment section. So let us know what you think. Leave your questions for us. Leave your requests for maybe what you'd like us to talk about next. We read everything. Everything. This guy reads everything twice.
I try. But I'll tell you what, you know, we did some good work here today. Alex, what I suggest is we sign off.
Yep.
And then swim back to that hotel. That's it. fresh, refreshing cool of Mai Tais.
Yes, have another Mai Tai for me. Thank you so much. Chris, as always, a pleasure. Let's hit the beach, hit the water, hit the Mai Tais, and we'll see everybody next week for another Tell the Damn Story Summer.
And we might still be here because it's that beautiful, y'all.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Peace.